What is up guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is Dr. Hammerstein, and today we'll be doing a comparison video here between two very powerful and awesome phones. In the first corner here we have the POCO F4 GT and it's going up against the Realme GT2 Pro. So what we're going to do is of course go through the key specs and features on both of these two amazing phones, and of course help you to decide which phone to get by the end of this video. So yes, without further ado, let's just get right into it. Okay, so we're going to start off with the prices on both of these two phones, and I will also include the USD prices as well. So the Realme GT2 Pro here in Malaysia does go off for about 2,999 ringgit Malaysia, but if you do look out for some sales, you can find it one for about 2,599 ringgit Malaysia. And going on to the nice POCO F4 GT over here, for the base model, it does start off at about 2,299 ringgit Malaysia. If you want the highest spec model, you can get one for 2,499 ringgit Malaysia. Of course, there are some sales that I can see here in Malaysia, and you can get the base model for about 2,099 ringgit Malaysia. And if you want the highest spec model, you can get one for about 2,199 ringgit Malaysia. Okay, so next thing we'll talk about here is the build and design on both of these two phones. So starting with the front display here over here, what we have is a nice Corning Gorilla Glass Victus that you can find on both of these two phones. And if you switch it on to the back, on the F4 GT, it is made out of glass, but it's not a Corning Gorilla Glass. And in terms of the frame, it does have a nice aluminum frame. Going on to the GT2 Pro, it depends on what kind of model you get. Initially, I got the white color edition, which is made up of the plastic material. Here, it feels more, a bit more glass, I would say, and does have a very nice finish to it. And yes, it definitely does feel really good, but of course, it's not yet clarified by Realme what kind of material you can find on the back. If you guys got any answers, do leave it in the comment section down below. Going on to the other stuff, on the bottom, you can see here we have the USB-C for charging, we have your stereo speaker setup, and on the GT2 Pro, you have your SIM card tray slot, which is something you can find on the F4 GT on the top left-hand corner. And if you go on to the right side on each of these phones, what we can have here is the power button. But for the F4 GT, it does also act as your fingerprint scanner because it doesn't have your under display. And if you go on to the left side, we can find the volume rockers on both of these two phones. Of course, one of the major things about the F4 GT is that magnetic triggers that we have here on both ends, so you can use it for your gaming sessions and whatnot. All you need to do is just pop it open and it gets the job done. Very easy to reach, very nice to use it. I've been using it for some gaming sessions. Works really nice. And if you guys don't want to use it for your gaming sessions, what you can do is of course customize these buttons to open up certain things like your camera app and whatsoever. So you don't have to be worrying about, unlocking your phone and finding out where's the app. What you need to do is just trigger this up and it will get your job done, which of course works really, really awesome. Going on to the designs on both of these two phones, as we can see here, the F4 GT definitely does have a very rugged design, very nice, very gaming feel like, and it does have a nice matte finish to it. You're going to get a little bit of fingerprints on the back, not too massive I would say, but you still would get some compared to the Realme GT2 Pro here, which is a little bit harder to get. And even with the white color edition, it is a little bit harder to get fingerprints on the back. Of course, in terms of the camera layout, I gotta say that the GT2 Pro definitely does look a little bit more professional. It looks more pleasant to me. This one definitely looks a bit more simple and minimalistic. And of course, in terms of the curved sides, this one does feel a little bit more squarish, as we can see over here. Whereas on the GT2 Pro, it's more of a curved design, so it's very nice to comfortable to hold. But it definitely does feel a little bit slipperier compared to the F4 GT. So definitely slap on a case or maybe a skin on this so you don't have to worry about slipping off your hand. But overall, in terms of the weight and how it feels on both of these two phones, it really feels really nice. But also, one thing that I want to note to you guys is the fact that both of these two phones do have a different type of display. Here we have a nice flat off display. Here it's a little bit curved on the GT2 Pro, so that may be a little bit bothersome for some of you guys. Okay, so next thing we'll talk about are the displays on both the two phones. So starting with the F4 GT, it does come with a nice 6.67 inch display compared to the 6.7 you can find on the GT2 Pro. One thing you'll notice here is that with the F4 GT, it does have a thicker bezel compared to the GT2 Pro. Of course, that is a little bit better in case if you guys want to use it for your gaming sessions. Other than that, in terms of the specs, both of them do have your 120Hz AMOLED panel. Both of them do have your 1 billion colors, HDR10+ support. And in terms of brightness brightness here, this one can go up to a peak of 1400 nits. Over here, it's not yet really specified, but it can go up to 800 nits. I'm not too sure about the peak brightness over here. Other than that, both of them do support your 1440p on the GT2 Pro, whereas over here, it's stuck at 1080p. Okay, and now we're going to test out the speakers on both of these two phones. Okay, so next thing we'll test out here is the face and fingerprint unlock. So if I just click on the side over here on the F4 GT, works really well. One more time, as we can see, works obviously very fast and you won't actually miss it at all. If you go on to the face unlock, as we can see there, works really well. And if you go on to the GT2 Pro, again, the under display also works really well. And if you go to the face unlock as well, boom, you are right in. One more time, boom, you are right into your phone. Both of them do have a very fast face and fingerprint unlock. Okay, so one thing to note about both of these two phones is that the GT2 Pro does have a sort of a splash resistance, something that the F4 GT doesn't have. Alright, so next thing we'll talk about here is the battery and charging on both these two phones. So starting with the GT2 Pro, it does have a nice 5000 mAh of battery compared to the F4 GT's 4700. Both of them do use the same kind of tech when it comes to charging up. They do have that dual cell battery to give you that super fast charging. In terms of screen on time, to be honest, they are very similar indeed. Both of them do give you a nice full day use, but I do notice that with the GT2 Pro, it does give me a little bit more juice compared to the F4 GT. Now let's talk about the charging on both of these two phones. So with the Realme GT2 Pro, we do have the 65 watt super dart charge over here, so it's able to charge up from 0 all the way to 100% in just about 30 minutes. And if you think that is crazy, wait till you hear about the POCO F4 GT, which does have a massive 120 watt brick charge over here, so it's able to charge up from 0 all the way to 100% in just about 15 minutes. So another thing that is very similar on both of these two phones are the internal specs. So both of them do have the same Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 processor, and on this table over here, I do have the 12 gigs RAM variant on both of these two phones and 256 gigs of storage. You do not have any microSD expansion on both of these two phones, and yes, they do have your 5G support. I have actually done a separate video comparison to compare the performances in terms of benchmark tests, in terms of battery and all this other stuff, RAM management, and I'll leave a link up above and also down below for you guys to check it out. But what I can say is that performances on both of these two phones are really awesome. Okay, and of course, one of the major differentiating factor when it comes to choosing your phone is definitely when it comes to the software. So both here, we have the Android 12 on both of these two phones. The F4 GT does have your MIUI 13, whereas on the GT2 Pro, it's running your REALMEUI 3.0. What I can say is that the software experience on both of these two phones are really nice. And of course, in terms of customizations and personalizations, both of them are really excellent. You have your side panel over here, you have your quick ball feature, and of course you can customize your screensaver settings, you can customize your always on display, a lot of things you can actually do. You can do your themes, a lot of stuff. But yes, I do hear a lot of people complaining about the POCO and of course the Xiaomi MIUI software that is a little bit buggy. For me, to be honest, I haven't really noticed major bugs over here so far when I'm using both of these two phones, and in terms of just moving around and of course maneuvering around, it works really fine. Of course, works really well on me. Of course, if you guys got anything to share, do leave it in the comment section down below. Alright, and of course, one of the last things that we do want to compare on both of these two phones are the cameras. So of course, when we talk about the layout on the F4 GT, it's located on the center, which of course is something I really do prefer compared to the GT2 Pro, which is located on the top left-hand corner. In terms of the specs over here, on the POCO F4 GT, the selfie shooter, we do have a 20 megapixel f2.4 sensor, and it can record up to 1080p at 60 fps. Going on to the GT2 Pro here, we do have a nice 32 megapixel sensor, but it can only record up to 1080p at 30 fps. So starting with the Realme GT2 Pro, it does have a triple camera setup and it does have a nice dual 15 megapixel camera sensor. The first one here is the 50 megapixel main lens f1.8 sensor. It does have your multi-directional PDF, which is your dual autofocus, and it does have your OIS. Going on to the other one, which is the ultra wide with the 150 degrees field of view. It is f2.2 and of course it also is 50 megapixel. And lastly, we have a third one here, 3 megapixel f3.3 sensor, and it can go up to about 40 times of magnification, which of course is your microscope sensor. And going on to the POCO F4 GT, it also does have a triple camera setup. The main lens does come with a 64 megapixel f1.9 sensor with dual autofocus. The second one here is the ultra wide 8 megapixel f2.2 with a normal 120 degrees field of view. And we do have a macro shooter here, f2.4, 2 megapixel sensor. Now let's check out some shots on both these two phones and let's see who will come out on top. Alright, so that is it between the POCO F4 GT and the Realme GT2 Pro. Of course, the ultimate question is which one to get. For me, to be honest, if I want to talk about the overall value, I would definitely choose the POCO F4 GT. For the price point, which is about 500 ringgit cheaper compared to the GT2 Pro, we are getting a lot more kind of specs. Alright, so that is it between the POCO F4 GT and the Realme GT2 Pro. And of course, the ultimate question is which phone to get. For me, to be honest, I will go for the POCO F4 GT. I can save about almost 500 ringgit, which is about more than 100 USD. And in terms of the specs, it's very, very similar indeed. And because it does have your magnetic triggers as well, which of course is really, really cool. Of course, people might argue that this might be kind of worn off after some time. Of course, POCO did clarify that you can actually click all the way you want. But in terms of the overall package, I actually really do like the POCO F4 GT. But definitely that doesn't take away from the GT2 Pro, which of course is an excellent phone. In terms of the design over here, in terms of the camera, I really do like it over here. And of course, people might be paying a little bit more for that extra kind of features and of course that nicer UI as well, which I would admit that I do feel that the Realme UI is a little bit nicer to use compared to the MIUI version. Because these are just my thoughts and my opinions. Do leave yours in the comment section down below. If you guys find this video helpful and also want to see more of this type of videos, do click the like and smash the subscribe button down below for more videos like this in the future. Do also follow me on my socials as well on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and also here on YouTube at Dr. Hummerstack. So that is it. This is Dr. Hummerstack. Stay safe, take care, and wash those hands.